Well, guess what, Mr. President? You're not so big, are you? Newsflash, President Joe Biden is replacing Hail to the Chief with Phil Collins' I Just Don't Care Anymore. Hey, everybody, I'm Steve Green with Bill Whittle and Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com and Phil Collins' bitterest, angriest song. I made that part up, but it's part of a broader point. Gentlemen, as you know, almost every successful politician relies on that old joke that sincerity, once you learn to fake that, you've got it made. Well, what happens when a politician who's always known how to fake sincerity doesn't care anymore to fake it? And to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about, let me show you just 10 seconds of President-ish Joe Biden speaking on Monday.
My plans are to produce the strongest, fastest, most widespread economic recovery America has ever experienced, with record jobs, new record small businesses, and wages rising.
Now, Scott, on the backstage, I was going to play this clip and get into this whole big talk about the economy and all the numbers and the details. But when I watched the clip again with you guys, it made me think that it wasn't just a president who was lying. It was a president who was lying badly. His heart just doesn't seem to be in it. And that's when you popped up again on the backstage show available to Bill Whittle members, that you had seen just a series of headlines that kind of gave you a similar vibe. Could you tell us about those, please?
Yeah, and the one that really caught my eye was the one where basically there was a Democratic Party senator, U.S. senator, who was telling the media that they'd rather that the president just stayed out of the whole discussion about gun control legislation as they debate this in the wake of the shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde and elsewhere. I thought it was an odd thing to so publicly sort of brush back your party leader. You know, the president tends to be sort of the nominal head of whatever party is in command at that time. And for a relatively minor player in the U.S. Senate to basically say, well, we really don't need to hear from the president on this. We'll handle this one ourselves, seemed to indicate a certain, I don't think it's a lack of respect, but it's almost a realization that this president doesn't cast a very long shadow. He doesn't have very long coattails. He doesn't, there's not a lot to be gained from engaging him in the issue. And he certainly doesn't have the ability to command an audience or to put across his opinion in a way that sways people, as even presidents with whom I've disagreed in the recent past have had. They could do that with things that I didn't like. This one, he just seems to struggle with everything. So I don't go as far as some people do, just because I don't think it's useful for me to do so. And alleging that he's losing his marbles or that he's being manipulated behind the scenes. I just think he's a senator. That's what he was. He's not an effective leader. You don't go to the Senate if you're a leader.
Scott, you gave me a little bit of a thought here. Maybe you can expand on this a bit. I remember during the 2020 election when Joe Biden was selling himself as the experienced Capitol Hill negotiator who could work with both sides to get legislation passed. And now he can't even wrangle his own side, can he?
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting. And if that's the kind of person you are, the presidency is not what you want. The kind of person who does what he was talking about works for the president. He's like a legislative consultant or advisor who behind the scenes, nobody ever hears his name, and he goes back and forth and runs around Capitol Hill trying to get people on board with the president's agenda. It's not his role. Again, that's why we've really elected relatively few senators to that role. The governor's ranks, we've called many presidents out of the governor's ranks, and in the case of Donald Trump, somebody who had no elective office but was a business leader. So I just don't think, I think he's out of his depth in so many ways. But in this particular way, they've got to find something for him where he has authority and give him that responsibility so it doesn't look like a complete washout term.
He has complete authority over which napkin he uses at pudding time every afternoon. I think that's about as much responsibility
I'm not sure
as
he
he's
gets
up to
make
these days.
that choice.
No, he might not. No, I just lost my thought because of the pudding time joke. That's
Sorry.
okay. We'll go to Bill now. Bill, we've got a president who apparently, this was in a Politico story earlier this week, is peeved because his popularity is now less than Donald Trump's was. And he's managing an economy that's looking more and more like Jimmy Carter's with high inflation and probably stagflation, maybe even a recession around the corner. Does he sound to you like a guy who is maybe becoming resigned to his lousy place in history?
I have a different theory about this. Scott, you are the kindest and most fair-minded person I've ever met, and I admire you enormously for it.
Yes.
Here it comes.
But I really do have to wonder what it's going to take for you to realize that this guy is in advanced stages of dementia. I saw this firsthand with my mom. I know what this looks like. I've been saying it for 2-3 years now, that it's going to get worse and worse and worse. It will never get better. You have to realize he hasn't done a press conference in 4 months. You also have to wonder how much rehearsal he has to do just to get through the teleprompter, and he didn't even get through this one without stumbling. Now, you could make the case that, well, gee, that's just Joe. But Joe Biden didn't look or sound like this when he was vice president of the United States, and look or sound like this even 3 or 4 years ago. Something happened. I believe he had a stroke personally. His smile is uneven, but what the cause of it is not the point.
Sure.
I think every single person, well, certainly every single newspaper overseas is well aware of the fact that this guy is not mentally competent and hasn't been since the campaign in 2020. Steve, the answer to me is not a question of him having lost enthusiasm. The question now to me is that this man is mentally and physically exhausted doing the simplest possible things, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows it. You could speculate all you want to who's actually doing the role of president of the United States, but it's not this guy. These are not gaffes, by the way. These are not misspoken events. I've made gaffes. I've misspoken. Well, no, I haven't actually, but nevertheless, we know what that looks like, right? We know what it looks like when somebody is having the conversation. They're recorded. Everything they say is recorded. They either say something that contradicted something, or they miss a word or something. This isn't that. This isn't that. That is a guy who again and 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 again gets to a point in the script, goes off the rails, fumbles around, and has that vacant look. And usually his form of recovering is, and this kind of oh, I'm just kidding you kind of laugh. I've said this many times before. It needs to continue to be said. Not only do I not find it unreasonable, I think it's insane that we do not have a mental acuity test of not only every president, but every single member of the House of Representatives and the Senate that is administered every year. In one of the Moving Back to America, as I did not long ago, I basically said, the kind of the person who flies the airplane that you ride on in a commercial jetliner has to have a physical exam every 6 months, has to go in for simulator training every 6 months, has to constantly recertify himself, because it's important that the guy who's flying the plane is capable of flying the plane. And if you're flying the country, it doesn't seem like an unreasonable request for me. I know look, a lot of people don't like Donald Trump. A lot of people think Donald Trump says stupid things, but Donald Trump took and passed one of these cognition tests not too long ago. And you don't have to like what Donald Trump says, but there's no question that Donald Trump is there live in the moment when he's doing his rallies. Joe Biden has not been seen impromptu in what I think is 120 days now, something like this. And if all they're asking him to do is to get in front of a teleprompter and read a 2-minute canned speech, and this is the result, then you really have to wonder what it's like when we're not showing the highlights.
You know, Bill, he actually did have a press conference. Biden did on Friday, kind of a short one. And I've got a question for you about that, but it's for the lightning round coming up later this week. So I don't want to I don't want to give anything away, but I think you'll get a very bad kick out of it. You know, it occurs to me these last 2 senators we've gotten elected president. There might be an argument for amending the Constitution that once you become a senator, you are forbidden from even running for president. I think we've got too many senators who, see themselves as an ex-president. That makes for worse senators than we have, or than we used to have. Anyway, out of all the, actually it occurs to me that Bill and Scott might both be right on this one, that yes, he's an increasingly senescent old man, but that's part of why he's given up. He doesn't have the energy or the acuity to turn around and to make some policy and some personnel changes that are necessary to get this economy turned around. And frankly, I don't think even if he did, he wouldn't be that interested in it. He just likes spending other people's money and, making sure the big guy gets his cut. But out of all the just maliciously stupid, malinformed things Joe Biden has ever said, I think my favorite was a couple of years ago when he said Milton Friedman isn't running the show anymore. And that might not be an exact quote, but it's very close. He'd been asked if his Build Back Better agenda was going to be inflationary with all these trillions of dollars he would spend. And he said, Milton Friedman's not in charge here anymore. And it was Milton Friedman who said, as Scott mentioned during the backstage, that inflation everywhere is a monetary phenomenon. That is, you get inflation when you print dollars faster than the economy is growing. That's what we've been doing the last couple of years. And Biden wanted to do even more of it than he managed to get. And Biden dismissed these legitimate concerns just by saying Milton Friedman isn't in charge here anymore. Well, guess what? Milton Friedman was never in charge of anything. He was never president of the United States. He wasn't chairman of the Federal Reserve. He wasn't king of the world or anything like that. All he was an economist who more correctly and succinctly than anyone before him described what causes inflation. That's not the way Joe Biden sees the world. Joe Biden sees the world in what I call the big guy theory of reality, which means if the big guy wants to spend $6 trillion that don't exist and not have inflation, then that's what the big guy gets. Well, guess what, Mr. President? You're not so big, are you? And I think you're starting to realize it. There is your right angle on that, brought to you by the members of BillWhittle.com. Thanks so much for watching. And hey, if you like this show, go to Bill Whittle. Become a member. We'd love to have you on board. We could sure use your support. And if you can't do that, at least click that little thumbs up or that notification, something like that. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.